Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about the importance of staying calm when we do max effort lifts. Now, I generally mean this in the context for those of us who are doing conjugate type training, but even back when I used to mess with the Bulgarian light method, I used to quote Matt Perryman on that from his book Squat Every Day, which he stated, and he talked about, at least what he's been doing his doctoral work on at the time, looking into it at least, was that high levels of psychological arousal on heavy lifts actually impede recovery. Meaning, when we get really psyched up, we may not actually be stronger. We may not actually lift more weight, but what ends up happening is that we recover slower in the subsequent days. In other words, the more psyched up and the more psychologically aroused you are, the harder it is on your recovery, even when the exact same weight is lifted. Okay? And so he recommended against things like pre-workouts, listening to hard, loud music, things like that, when you are maxing. Okay? And I want people to understand speed work is different. I actually advocate people being aggressive with their speed work. Our maxes need to be calm. Our maxes need to be calm. And Louis Simmons actually wrote briefly on that. The only thing I recall him mentioning, like in his book of methods, is don't prepare yourself for your maxes. So what does that mean for max effort work? That means that we don't dwell on it, we don't think about it. So in my case, when dealing with my lifters, I pick the lifts for my lifters, obviously. They max out on the lifts that I pick for them in a spreadsheet. And I had one who had been having some anxiety with some of it, so I would do his on week by week blocks, and I wouldn't let him open it until max effort day. So if his block would start with a max effort day, I wouldn't let him open the spreadsheet till then, and I gave him strict orders to not open the file until he's on his way pretty much to the gym for the starting week, so that he doesn't know what he's going to max on. I've done random number generators in the past. I actually decide the day of a lift what I'm going to lift. Like all these lifts you see in the background, those weren't planned. I just decided that day this is what exercise I'm going to max out on. Why? Because dwelling about it the night before will interfere with your sleep. Okay? And we have to stay calm. And the worst cases of this, I've had clients who in the past didn't understand this. They didn't take this advice, and they'd spend all day preparing for a max effort lift. Well, here's what most of you guys notice. When you see what I do, watching my vlogs week in, week out, I hit maxes, and even when I miss a max, I come in and I'm still strong on my supplemental work. Meaning my 10 rep lifts don't turn into 6 rep lifts. Okay, a weight that I can do 3 sets of 10 with, fresh, doesn't turn into a 5 rep max after that. But when someone's psyched up, it does. So we come over to that point when people say silly stuff like, oh, well, maxing out interferes with your training volume. Well, you don't know how to max correctly. It shouldn't. You come in and you miss a deficit deadlift, so what? You shouldn't be weaker for it. You should be able to come in and lift pretty close to the same amount of weights for your 10 rep sets, 12 rep sets, whatever you're doing. Okay? You should be able to do so. Why? Because you just came in and lifted one hard rep. In other words, it's no more difficult in terms of muscle fatigue. It's no more difficult than failing a set, doing one set to failure. Now, have you ever done a single set to failure and found that it ruined your strength for the rest of a workout? Probably not. Okay, probably not. So I wonder at max shouldn't either. Well, people talk about, what about the nervous system component? Well, this has been researched. There is no CNS fatigue from max lifts. There's like zero. When I say zero, I don't mean literally. I mean relative to other forms of exercise. In other words, doing a 1 mile run, a 1 mile jog actually creates way more central nervous system fatigue, like 10 magnitudes higher than an all-out max deadlift does. And that's not what I'm saying, that's what the researchers have found who measure this in humans. Okay? So if you're getting nervous system issues, it's emotional, it's psychological, because you got too psyched up for the lift. And I'm not saying you shouldn't be in your zone, but our max effort days in training are training maxes. Now, people say, well, does that mean we shouldn't miss lifts? You shouldn't grunt. No, that's not what we're saying at all. But you're not prepared for it. It's the heaviest weight that you can come in and lift that day without a bunch of stims, without a pre-workout, without slapping yourself. Right? Calm maxes. Because when you miss a psyched up lift, it affects your strength and it affects your recovery. This is not a good thing. Also, this is where injuries occur. There's nothing inherently dangerous about lifting your max. I want people to understand that. If you've built strong connective tissue, strong core, and you're focusing, there's nothing dangerous about it. In fact, max lifts are safer than missing a 5-rep set to failure. They're safer in terms of injury. I've covered that in the past. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that we're doing a single rep. We're calm, we're focused, we're braced, we're tight. If you're calm and you can maintain a state of calm, you can get tight. You can focus on squeezing the bar harder. You can focus upon doing everything correctly and then pushing or pulling as hard as you can for 3.5 seconds. And yes, I picked that time for a reason. And it comes back to that point that I pointed out. You see guys like Louis Simmons say strength is measured in time, not pounds. That's right, because how long can you exert maximum force? Statistically speaking, unless you are amazingly good at grinding, how often do you make a lift that lasts more than 3.5 seconds? Pretty rare. And what's kind of the upward limit of what you see? Maybe 6 seconds, and that's at the extreme end in competition, right? 3.5 seconds. We need to be able to push or pull as hard as we can for about 3.5 to 4 seconds. You focus, you dig in, and you do that. And you push or you pull as hard as you can. Now, a deadlift can be slower than that sometimes. Deadlifts can be a little grindier. Squatting and bench pressing, it's very, very rare to see one go past about 4 seconds without being a miss. You can focus, you can concentrate, you can keep your technique in, you can focus on staying tight. And if you stay tight, your injury risks get very, very low. People even say, what about bicep tears on deadlift? Yeah, that's usually caused because you got loose. That's actually a large contributing factor. Hurting your back, usually because you got loose. You didn't stay tight. And if you can focus and concentrate, staying tight's pretty easy to do for 1 rep for 3.5 seconds. If you're psyched up, it's harder to do that. Alright guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.